All right, welcome everybody. This is the college football preview for week 3 of college football. I'm here with James,
Yo yo.
and we're just going to we're going to run down a couple of the games this week. We saw 9 matchups that are kind of intriguing that everybody should watch this week. So we're going to start off with the Kansas-South Florida game. This is played at South Florida. It's a night game at Raymond James Stadium. Kansas is coming off a win last week over Louisiana Tech, 29-0. And South Florida is coming off a win last week against the Golden Knights of Central Florida at Central Florida, 31-24 in overtime. I handicap this as a Kansas win, probably by a touchdown. Kansas has looked pretty good all this season so far. The Bulls looked really, really bad last week. Central Florida lost a lot of players last year, including Kevin Smith at running back and their quarterback from last season, and they kind of laid an egg. Yet they still pulled it out last week at Central Florida. But I got to give the Kansas Jayhawks the edge here, maybe by 3 to 6 points.
All right, I agree. Taking the hotter team, Kansas, from a better conference in this game. The next game, Saturday morning, is Georgia at South Carolina. Even though South Carolina got beat by Vanderbilt last week, the Spurriers always had Georgia's number, so it's interesting in that regard. And Georgia could be looking past to because they're about to start a tough stretch in their schedule. But while it's intriguing and I'll watch it and I always cheer for Spurrier in some regard, and I always hate Georgia. I think the Bulldogs win.
Yeah, you got to think Georgia wins. Georgia's way too talented. South Carolina came off a bad loss last week, so I agree. All right, the next game on the docket is Oregon at Purdue, number 16 Oregon. Purdue's unranked. Oregon got a win last week against Utah State, 66-24. It was a laugher. And Purdue Boilermakers won last week, 42-10 over Northern Colorado. This game is at Purdue, so it makes it a little more intriguing than you might think. But Oregon, I think that they're the much better team. They should come in there. They should get a road win. But it's probably going to be a lot closer than you might expect. I expect them to win by maybe a touchdown.
Okay, I stated in the preview I like Oregon this year, and I'm going to take Oregon to win this game on the road, although it's always a tough thing to win on the road. UCLA at BYU is another game that'll be of national interest this week. BYU looks like they're pretty good and maybe the BCS buster. UCLA, of course, just beat Tennessee at home, and they've had a week off. It'll be interesting to see how they show up for this game on the road against a BYU team that should be pretty fired up to be a BCS level team. I'm going to take BYU. I think that had Tennessee played UCLA not in UCLA, Tennessee would have won. And I think the same thing here. UCLA on the road won't be able to match up with BYU.
I actually have to disagree. I think that UCLA wins this game. BYU looked pretty bad against a subpar Washington team. Yeah, they won, but I don't know. I'm picking UCLA. All right, the next game on the docket is Michigan at Notre Dame. This is a rivalry that's dated back quite a bit. And the game is in Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend. It's going to be a 3:30 kickoff, and it matches up the 1-1 Michigan Wolverines and the 1-0 Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Notre Dame looked terrible last week against San Diego State. They had to score 14 points in the fourth quarter to pull out a win at home against the team that lost to Cal Poly the week before. I think that Notre Dame sucks, and I hear all these people thinking that they're going to get 6 wins to 10 wins, somewhere around there. I think they win 3 games this year, just like last year. Charlie Weiss might even get fired at the end of this season. That team looked awful. Michigan, on the other hand, got a win last week at home against Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio is a much better team than San Diego State, and they ended up winning, like I said, 16-6. And I think Michigan is on the way to rebuilding that team, and I expect a win from Michigan against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'm with you on the dumping on Notre Dame. I mean, they're just terrible. You got to take Michigan. I'd take Michigan, but I don't know, big if I had to. The next game we were pointing out is highlighted on our calendar was Georgia Tech at Virginia Tech. Of course, Virginia Tech lost a couple weeks ago to Eastern Carolina, but still has ACC title hopes. And Georgia Tech had the big win last week at Boston College, so they've proven they can win on the road. And they're under their first-year coach, Paul Johnson, and they look pretty good. However, I think the Virginia Tech losing to Eastern Carolina was somewhat of an aberration because they were on the road. So I'm going to take the home team, Hokies, to beat Georgia Tech.
Yeah, as it turns out, East Carolina is pretty good, and Virginia Tech barely lost to East Carolina with a late blocked punt. So, I think that Virginia Tech also wins this game. The next game that we're going to look at is Oklahoma versus Washington. As I said earlier, Washington doesn't really do it for me. I think that Ty Willingham is kind of doing a poor job up there. They lost last week in a nail-biter against BYU at home, 28-27, after that kind of questionable call for excessive celebration, and then they had their extra point blocked and 0 time remaining. I think that Oklahoma absolutely dominates them. Oklahoma showed me a lot last week. They played a pretty tough Cincinnati Bearcat team, and they won 52-26. It was a laugher from the beginning. I think that Oklahoma is one of the top 3 teams in the country. You know, if the Gators were playing them, I think that they'd run all over us as of right now. We'll leave that for a different day. But I think Oklahoma wins this game by probably 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, I agree. The only reason this game is really of any interest is that it's Oklahoma going on the road up in Washington, which you don't always see, but you got to take Oklahoma. I mean, unless this game gets moved to the Fiesta Bowl, there's no reason to think Washington could pull it out. Well, besides a big one, the last game would be Wisconsin at Fresno State, where we'll see which team is for real. Fresno State, if they're going to seriously be, a BCS Buster type team, this is their chance to show the nation what they can do, and they get to play Wisconsin at home. Now, Wisconsin, they've been highly ranked the last few years, and so we'll get to see if they go in and throttle Fresno State. Well, maybe it means Fresno State wasn't for real, but it could also mean that this Wisconsin team is very good. So at least it's a intriguing out-of-conference game, which you don't always get from some teams. I'm going to take Fresno State because they're the home team and it's late and Wisconsin has to go all the way across the country, and I don't believe in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. Fresno State looked really good against Rutgers, and Rutgers is building that program, under Greg Schiano, and they beat them at Rutgers. Wisconsin, for the second straight week, came out really, really sluggish, especially against a team like Marshall. They were down 14-0 in the second quarter. Yeah, they ended up winning 51-14, but like I said, they came out sluggish, and if they're going to come out sluggish against Fresno State, they might be down 28-0, not 14. So I expect Fresno State to win it. It'd probably be pretty close, but I would say they'd probably win by maybe 6. Now for the last game of the week, this is the big one. We've been talking about this for a long while now. It's Ohio State, number 5 Ohio State, at the Trojans of University of Southern California, number 1 team in the nation as of right now. I was not impressed at all last week with Ohio State, as with probably everybody else in the country. They played the Ohio Bobcats, and at one point in the third quarter, they were losing 14-12. Actually, in the fourth quarter, 14-12. Now, they don't have Beanie Wells. They didn't have Beanie Wells in that game. I don't know if he's going to be back. He's been wearing a protective boot on his foot. But, I don't know what to think of them right now. Like James said earlier, the Big Ten is, that's the sound I would make to describe the Big Ten. Now, on the other hand, USC got a week off to prepare for this game. They looked phenomenal against Virginia, like we talked about last week. I expect the Trojans to run all over them. Ohio State has shown in the past that they can't keep up with the speed of certain teams, and outside of the SEC, Southern Cal is easily the fastest team in the country. Well, besides Miami, but Southern Cal has a ton of speed and a ton of talent and a good coach and a good program and first teamers on their third team. So I think that USC dominates this game. They probably win by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I agree. USC and these type of games especially and at home, that's going to be way too much for Ohio State. They could clone Beanie Wells and it probably still wouldn't matter if they had 2 of them, but healthy ones back there. I expect USC to win and win big. I mean, over the years they've played Auburn and gone and shut them out, and played Arkansas, granted without Darren McFadden, but they still put up like 70 points on them on the road. I mean, and they always take these bye weeks, and Pete Carroll, for whatever reason, gets his team really ready for these type of non-conference games, especially with the bye. This isn't them losing a conference game to Stanford because they only have a week and maybe they're looking past it. I mean, this one's been circled for over a year probably, and they'll be ready, and they're just going to house Ohio State.
All right, for James, this is Chris. We'll be back probably later in the week to do another podcast about some other things besides Gator football. Maybe some tailgating, maybe some NFL stuff, I'm not really sure. But we'll definitely be back next week for a preview of the Gator game against Tennessee. All right, take care.
Late.